Coming up tonight, this weekend belongs to Queen Elizabeth II, even in memory. One state minister talks about the Prime Minister's trip to London to eulogize the Queen. Our news is on the ground in London for the Queen's funeral, speaking to British on what the Queen meant to them. And our news also speaking to Bahamians there in London, mourning the Queen. Remember, our news is the only Bahamian network in London on this occasion. Stay close. This is our News Weekend edition. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Megan Shepard. Prime Minister Philip Davis closing out the 15th anniversary meeting of the Nassau Conference of the Association of International Bankers and Trust Companies recently. While there, he commended the body for their strong leadership and staying the course for 46 years while building a resilient, transparent, and well-regulated financial services sector. The Prime Minister highlighting the fact that his administration launched a policy white paper that outlines the future of digital assets in the Bahamas. He says this paper sets out the vision and supporting framework that will transform the Bahamas into the leading digital asset hub in the Caribbean. So how does it tie into the banking industry?
We enacted legislation and a framework to enable the Bahamas to deal and trade in carbon credits. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bahamas is not only open and ready for business, but moving to the forefront of this most exciting era.
He says that enhancing the ease of doing business is also a priority.
Some of the ways to achieve this are by revamping and streamlining processes at the Bahamas Investment Authority, the Registrar General's Office, Department of Inland Revenue, and other agencies to become one of the most business-friendly countries for local and foreign investors.
The Prime Minister adding that the country operates against a history of challenges and attacks on our jurisdiction by a number of international bodies.
That by working together with a shared vision and rallying around common objectives, we can and have weathered the blacklistings, the grey listings, and the watch lists.
He encouraged the body to continue the growth and development of this industry. The Prime Minister and a delegation currently in London to attend the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II on Monday, September 19th. Minister of State in the Office of the Prime Minister, Miles Larota, giving an update on the Prime Minister's possible agenda while in London.
Knowing this Prime Minister, he would have probably set up bilateral meetings with NGOs or individuals there, leaders of other countries after the funeral to further discuss things that are in the best interest of the Bahamian people and the Bahamas.
In less than 12 hours, the world's attention will focus on London for one of the most watched broadcasts in modern times. U.S. President Joe Biden is among the top world leaders expected in London for tomorrow's state funeral for Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Governor General His Excellency C.A. Smith and Prime Minister Brave Davis will also be in attendance. Today, thousands waited in line as much as 14 hours for an opportunity to file past the casket and pay their respects to Britain's longest-serving monarch. The Our News team in London spoke with some who stood in line for hours for a few minutes with their queen.
12 and a half hours, yes, 12 and a half hours.
And what was the moment like for you?
Surreal. Surreal to see her. Yeah, totally gobsmacked.
And why did you wait a whole 12 hours?
She was the queen. She was special. She was our queen.
It was just really overwhelming. Just sort of everyone in complete silence, just showing the Queen the honour and respect she deserves. About 14 hours, I think. Yeah, so it's been a long night, but 100% worth it.
While attendance at tomorrow's funeral service is by invitation only, it will be televised to millions around the world. Yet many are already gathering on the streets around Westminster and central London to be a part of this historic event. Our Jerome Sawyer is on the ground in London, where even now crowds are lining up to watch this event.
Few places but London can execute this level of planning for the world's biggest funeral. And when your sovereign has served for over 70 years and earned the title of longest-serving monarch, the only thing better is a sense of respect, admiration and duty that resounds with those here to mourn.
A lot of what happens here in the UK is built on tradition and culture, and this is what you're seeing now, is these events and the way things are done. A lot of things aren't even written, but things are understood.
You know, it's a very special moment. It's very sad. You know, we really feel the loss of the Queen. We wanted to be here really to pay our respect, so we went over to Green Park to lay some flowers earlier today, and we wanted the children to be part of it and to really understand a big moment in history.
Tomorrow's funeral here at Westminster Abbey will be witnessed in person by only a select few. The level of security and crowd control measures already in place 24 hours out are not unusual for London. Yet for all the people and activity, the occasion is not lost on those here.
I've been really impressed about the general sort of tone in the city.
Among those watching from nearby is Bahamian France Hepburn, who has lived here for over 3 decades.
It's really, really incredible, the affection and love they're showing for the Queen. I'm not surprised, because as I said earlier, that she has been so stable, a rock, consistent, no controversy with regards to her.
Cian Smith is another Bahamian living in the UK, also with a keen sense of the importance of this moment, even to Bahamians.
While she's the head of state, we were able to engage her and love her from a distance. She, along with the institution, didn't get involved in daily affairs, political affairs within the Bahamas. And I think the relationship was able to develop like that over the years.
In less than 24 hours, the eyes of the world will be focused here on Westminster Abbey. At this hour, though, this area is under heavy police security. All around us, they are preparing for the biggest global event, possibly in history. Tomorrow, we expect this area to be cordoned off completely as the royal family, dignitaries from around the world come to pay their final respects as the world watches and as we all prepare to say our goodbyes to Queen Elizabeth II. In London, for now, I'm Jerome Sawyer, reporting for Our News.
Thanks, Jerome. And still to come on Our News, a former representative of the monarchy says she shared a sisterly relationship with the Queen. And it's a no-go for Russian President Vladimir Putin receiving the snub for Queen Elizabeth's funeral. That's a no, the British says. That's coming up when the Weekend Edition continues.
Queen Elizabeth, Britain's longest reigning monarch, will be laid to rest Monday, September 19th, in a state funeral televised around the world. Join RTV's Christina Dragovich and Jerome Sawyer and the R News team for live coverage of Her Majesty's funeral. Tune in for live reports from London and a look at the Queen's legacy in the Commonwealth and the Bahamas. Watch it live starting this Monday at 5 a.m., September 19th, only on the RTV network. Brought to you in part by Island Pay.
With the world still reeling from the death of Queen Elizabeth II, our Marlene Leonard sat down with Dame Marguerite Pinling recently to discuss what the decade-spanning relationship she shared with the head of the monarchy meant to her. Here's that report.
Dame Marguerite Pinling's meetings with Queen Elizabeth II span over 50 years. First meeting her when she was 34 years old and last seeing her at the age of 87. By their last meeting in 2019, Dame Marguerite tells us the relationship with Her Majesty felt almost sisterly.
She was someone who put you at ease straight off. And so, to me having met her on so many different occasions, made me feel as if we were family. She had a way of, she behaved like a little girl. There was a twinkle in her eyes when she was mischievous when she laughed, and like the old people on Ireland say, she used to squawk, you know, at least in my presence. And that really put me at ease. And like I said, I left there feeling that afternoon that like I've left an older sister.
But Dame Marguerite wasn't always so astute with her knowledge of royal protocol. She recalls this early interaction with the Queen.
When we became the newest member of the Commonwealth, we met her in Ottawa, Canada. And I met her at dinner. And to tell you how green I was, and not realizing that you ain't supposed to talk to the Queen first, this island girl stepped right up and started a dinner. And then I just went on blabbering about the Bahamas, da-da-da-da-da.
The Queen was renowned for her knowledge and memory of the details of the Commonwealth, and Dame Marguerite echoes these sentiments, saying on more than one occasion the Queen had current Bahamian topics ready to go, including the first time the duo met after Dame Marguerite was widowed.
It was in 2007 as I was receiving my damehood. And before she said or did anything, I don't remember her saying hello to me. She just said to me that, "I am so sorry." But fortunately, I understood what she meant because my husband had died and Lyndon was her leader in the Caribbean. And so she worked closely with him and she really respected, and I thought she liked him very much.
The former Governor General says Her Majesty's death is like a light going out in the world, but that her lasting legacy of love and peaceful conflict resolution is one we can all learn from and try to emulate.
There'll not be another. And that is why you have the queuing up in Britain, in London as it is today, because she was well loved, highly respected by the world. And that love, could we continue? Could we build? Because what the world needs now is love.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
Queen Elizabeth II's funeral will be one of the biggest gatherings of political leaders and royalty in years, with some 500 invitations being sent out to heads of state and foreign dignitaries. In attendance will be U.S. President Joe Biden, the presidents of Germany, Italy, South Korea, Brazil, and France. There will also be leaders of Commonwealth countries, including Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the Bahamas' Prime Minister Philip Davis. However, countries that will not be in attendance will be Belarus, Syria, Venezuela, Afghanistan, and Russian President Vladimir Putin. According to reports, a Russian official said it was deeply immoral that the UK snubbed President Putin over the war in Ukraine. Following the Queen's death, Putin sent a telegram to King Charles III expressing his condolences and wishing him courage and perseverance in the face of this heavy, irreplaceable loss. And coming up, when Our News comes back from the break, Falcons Boys Club holds a pizza and prayer day in the second city. And Enter the Dragon with charity. Dragon boat racing gives to the Cancer Society. We have the details when the weekend edition returns.
Queen Elizabeth, Britain's longest reigning monarch, will be laid to rest Monday, September 19th, in a state funeral televised around the world. Join RTV's Christina Dragovich and Jerome Sawyer and the R News team for live coverage of Her Majesty's funeral. Tune in for live reports from London and a look at the Queen's legacy in the Commonwealth and the Bahamas. Watch it live starting this Monday at 5 a.m., September 19th, only on the RTV network. Brought to you in part by Island Pay.
Welcome back. The Falcons Boys Club and its corporate sponsors continuing to pour into the lives of young men in the Grand Bahama community. Yesterday, the boys were treated to a pizza and prayer day. While the boys kicked back and enjoyed some fun, sponsor and representative for Family Guardian encouraged the boys to take heed of the advice given during the day.
Young men, those gentlemen who came up here this morning and they pray over your lives, it shows that your future is going to be bright. It's all in the mind. What you perceive your mind to be, don't let no one try and tear that from you. Okay, you could be whatever you want to be. What he said, God created you the way that he wants you to be, right? So take that and be positive. This center here, instead of when after school you're going out and trying to do idle things, come to the center. You could find positive things to do.
Director Darren Roll says he's grateful for the partnership.
Thank you for providing all of the pizza today for the young men. We are so grateful to Family Guardian for being a good corporate citizen, and this relationship with Family Guardian goes back over 15 years.
A local funeral home is lessening the burden for two grieving families as they prepare to bury their loved ones. Proprietor of Ambrose Funeral Home, Ambrose Gibson, says he is committed to handling funeral arrangements for drowning victims, 11-year-old Gerardo Atwell Taylor of Amos Street and 13-year-old Kensley Samuel Elias of Nassau Village.
We are assisting the families with the funeral expenses. There are other persons who are assisting, one of which I can remember from the top of my head is the Honorable Glennis Hannah Martin. There are some other citizens who are assisting in some way, form, or fashion. But the expenses are not covered entirely. So if there are persons who are touched the way that I have been touched and they would want to give a donation towards the expenses, please feel free to do so.
For those willing to assist with funeral expenses, St. Ambrose Funeral Home is located on Arundel Street. Kensley Elias's body was found in the Sea Breeze Canal days following the discovery of Gerardo Taylor Jr.'s body in a pond in Yellow Elder Gardens. The Cancer Society of the Bahamas receiving a big donation this past week thanks to the Bahamas Chinese Dragon Boat Racing Association. The inaugural event dubbed a huge success as 8 teams participated. Founding President Kay Tong says this will be a continued partnership.
We shall be naming our pink boat for the Cancer Society of the Bahamas and ensuring that a policy is put in place to allow free training and paddling for any and all breast cancer survivors wishing to experience dragon boat paddling going forward.
President of the Cancer Society of the Bahamas, Rochelle Wilkinson, expressing her gratitude for the $5,000 donation. She notes that the care center is a home away from home for cancer patients as they travel from the Family Islands for treatments.
In the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian, straight through the COVID pandemic, we have essentially had more or less a full house, all 10 rooms occupied most of the time. And as you can imagine, that can be quite costly. And so every donation that we get, we are very appreciative and we put it to good use.
Kat Bain is one of the cancer survivors that took part in the boat race. She says while it was a bit challenging to convince other survivors to participate, it was an exciting experience.
A lot of times we feel that we need to rest or we cannot overwork these muscles. However, getting out there, paddling, it helps with the range of motion, it helps build strength. It was absolutely, the practices were good, but the event was phenomenal. And after that was finished, every single member of the team just expressed how alive they felt.
Noting that the sport does offer health benefits, she says even more survivors are showing interest.
There are studies that show that people who are involved in this paddling actually don't get lymphedema, which is amazing. You know, for a lot of people do suffer with that problem after a mastectomy and radiation, and so it's really great for health.
Coming up just after the break, Fiona becomes a hurricane overnight. Our weatherman Greg Thompson is up next to tell us just how much of a threat Fiona really is. One man tells us how a chapter of his favorite hobby is closed with the passing of the Queen. That's coming up when our News Weekend edition returns.
Queen Elizabeth, Britain's longest reigning monarch, will be laid to rest Monday, September 19th in a state funeral televised around the world. Join RTV's Christina Dragovich and Jerome Sawyer and the R News team for live coverage of Her Majesty's funeral. Tune in for live reports from London and a look at the Queen's legacy in the Commonwealth and the Bahamas. Watch it live starting this Monday at 5 a.m., September 19th, only on the RTV network. Brought to you in part by Island Pay.
Welcome back to the Weekend Edition. Fiona, now a hurricane, continuing to move toward the west-northwest, with the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos likely to be impacted by late Monday into Tuesday. Our Greg Thompson is in the Weather Center with all of the information you need to stay up to date.
Yes, Megan, we are tracking now what is
Hurricane Fiona formed earlier today at 11 o'clock. Advisory upgraded it to a hurricane. Center of circulation passing to the south of Puerto Rico. A lot of the rain bands now spreading across that area. Continuing on a west-northwest track at about 8 miles per hour, packing 80-mile-per-hour winds. So it's a healthy-looking storm. And the center of circulation, it's tightening, so that system is going to continue to strengthen. Expected to pass between San Juan, well, Puerto Rico actually, and Dominican Republic later on tonight through tomorrow. And by Tuesday, we expect it just east of the Turks and Caicos Islands. So tropical storm warnings are in effect for the southeast Bahamas as well as Turks and Caicos Islands. So you guys should prepare for the close passage of the system beginning on Tuesday. Satellite radar imagery actually out of San Juan showing the rain bands associated with that system. Center for circulation just to the south. And as I mentioned, it's tightening, so that means the system is healthy and is continuing to strengthen and will pass through. Rain bands will begin to affect the southeast Bahamas starting late tomorrow and into Tuesday. So we expect anywhere from 2 to 4 inches of rainfall, isolated amounts of up to 4 to 8 inches spreading across the southeast Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos Islands. So flooding should be a problem, will be a problem. We expect you guys to make sure you prepare for that. Also, boaters, we're asking you to remain in port. The winds are going to be generating some very strong waves out there, and also swells will be affecting the island. So we're asking you to remain in port throughout the remainder of the week as the system passes to the east of the Bahamas. Boating forecast for the northwest Bahamas tonight to tomorrow. Your winds will be east to southeast 10 to 15 knots, seas 2 to 4 feet over the ocean. Your low tide will be at 9:34 tonight. For the central and southeast Bahamas, you boaters remain in port. Winds northeast to east 15 to 20 knots, but they will be picking up 25 to 30 knots beginning tomorrow night. Seas will be building 6 to 9 feet, but up to 12 feet in some swells. Here's a look now at your national forecast. A look at your extended forecast. Most of the Bahamas should be pretty nice, the exception being the southeast Bahamas. As Fiona passes close to you guys, showers and thunderstorms and tropical storm conditions expected to affect you guys through Tuesday and into Wednesday. That's a look at our weather. Make it a safe Sunday night, everybody.
Thanks so much for that update, Greg. Queen Elizabeth II's death has caused an outpouring of emotion across the globe. One Bahamian man relives a lifetime of memories of Queen Elizabeth II through memorabilia and newspaper clippings. Our Jean Joseph sits down with Simon Rapp Wilson, who shares a larger-than-life hobby turned passion and the end of a chapter.
Simon Wilson, better known as Rapp, is an historical hobbyist whose love for collecting news has spanned a lifetime. Wilson's collection covers various topics. His collection of British historical moments, especially of Queen Elizabeth II, are his prized pieces. He recalls his experience as one of many school children who flocked to see the Queen on Empire Day during her visit to the Bahamas in 1966, unaware of the gravity of what was taking place.
It was just a matter of excitement. You really didn't really know the meaning of it. I mean, really not. I mean, you were on television, it's to know the real seriousness of things, it's just not there.
Wilson still owns items from that moment as well as clippings of every occasion the Queen has been here during his lifetime, documenting her story and other notable moments in Bahamian history. Wilson's passion for collecting items grew when he started working at a hotel where he had access to newspapers all the time, stockpiling moments that most would forget.
This hobby of mine is beyond me, because the things that I have in my possession, newspaper stories, because you could think about any topic, I probably could show you something on it.
While it's clear to him now, Wilson says he did not always understand his purpose.
This is God's gift to me, because them things that I kept, I really didn't know what I was keeping at the time. I mean, but I was just fascinated by the stories. Seeing that the Queen has passed now, I just think it is appropriate. It closes my story.
Wilson's collection has become so extensive, he has turned a room in his house into his archival headquarters, meticulously storing and categorizing news items. The joy he has for his hobby is evident as he proudly shows pieces and explains their significance.
When I get to talk about my clippings, I get carried away. This is one of my love. I mean, softball was my love, but my talent just never developed. All right, so but this is my love of news stories what every Bahamian could identify with.
Wilson says he continues his work despite the cost and commitment, and he plans to share his work with the public to highlight historical moments and share lessons in time. But for now, he marks the close of the Queen's chapter in history. Reporting for Our News, I'm Gene Joseph.
Thank you so much for joining us for Our News Weekend Edition. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Megan Shepherd. Continue to have a safe and wonderful remainder of your weekend.